Okay. I think I'm recording here. Sorry, this is my, oh, there I see what's going on. Can I take a peek? Okay, I am recording. All right. I'm calling to order the EDC monthly meeting. Well, sorry, let's make sure we have I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 100% attendance. All right, calling to order the regular monthly meeting of the EDC, April 11th, 3. The agenda is on the screen. We have 3 topics to discuss. We have 3 topics to discuss. The Housing Working Group is going to give us an update on the rental incentive program. And then we have 2 items of old business. One is the launching the working groups or committees, whatever, not committees, of managing the impact of tourism, and just talking about that process and who's interested in what, just confirming. And then we have a presentation upcoming to the select board. It hasn't been scheduled yet, but I think it will be in May. It might be as early as before our next meeting. So I just wanted to run through roughly what I thought we would present. None of it is, or not much of it is new. And I just wanted to kind of get people's input so that we will be ready to report to the select board once they schedule the meeting. Are there any additions or deletions to that agenda? Hearing none. Citizen comments. If there are comments about things other than what's on the agenda, we usually have time for comments throughout, as we're talking about things. Are there any comments on items other than what's on the agenda? No? All right. Let's start then with the Housing Working Group. And Jill, I have your can you just walk away? So Jill and Trina, this is the this is included on the website. It's a single-page summary of the longer document that's on the website. So some of you may or may not have seen this, depending on whether when you downloaded the materials from the website. But Jill or Trina, do you want to take us through this and tell us what feedback you need from us?
Yep. We're just here to give you an update. We've been working with Placemates for the last month, maybe 6 weeks, and we're planning to launch this program on May the 9th. So we wanted to tell you how far we've come and what we plan to do before we launch it. So just information, we're not looking for any decisions.
Okay.
Okay. So first on the left-hand side is a reminder about what Placemates are going to do. Their program is called Lease to Locals. They run this program in 7 other tourist towns and get results in all of them. So there are the different towns that they're in and the number of units that they've converted so far. They also worked in Summit County, which is Breckenridge, and they got over 172 units there. And that program's winding down because they've got so many units already. And so what they'll do for us is a lot of the work that we ask Trina to do on the programs that we have. They'll do the administration and they'll do the marketing. So they'll qualify the property owners. They'll do a little bit of matching between tenants and landlords. They'll do all of the marketing. They'll be the ones who are responding to all the inbound inquiries. They'll do the detailed work for the landlord and the tenants so that the payment goes through, and then they'll carry out compliance checks through the year. Trina will work with them so that she's the representative of EDC. If there's any on the ground work to be done, she'll be working with them on that. And then the right side is the incentives that we've agreed with them. And based on their experience, these incentives are going to be a per qualified tenant. So before we've always worked on a per property, and that doesn't always maximize the number of tenants in a property. So this is the recommended way of doing it. So we've kept different incentives for studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, same per person, but obviously you can have a different number of people. You can have 3 maximum people in, or we will pay for 3 people in a single unit. And then we're also keeping our maximum rents so that this is what we believe are affordable in our community right now. So 800 for a private room, 1,000 for a studio, and then going up depending on the number of bedrooms. And then there's the promotion that we're planning. So postcards directly to second homeowners, then listserv posts, because that seems to reach an awful lot of people. We can do old-fashioned paper flyers in different places. Tom will be coming to you for some press coverage, and then we'll work on, we have the Lease to Locals website that we can direct people to, and then we'll also do some work on the town website so that it all works together. So would you add anything, Trina?
No, I think you've covered all of it well. Thank you.
And any questions?
Jill, I have a quick question. Is any of this different in particular? I just want to make sure that, because I don't recall the incentives, the incentive structure. Is that the same as the structure that was presented to us when we approved the grant?
No, we did put, we have changed that. So there was an incentive structure that was based on the number of bedrooms in the property.
And so how many, based on the expected results, I guess, assuming that how many units if we were doing it before, by what would be the metrics of this? Have we increased the incentive? Are we just expecting to get the same number of people or the same number of
our targets are the same. So it's 11 units and 18 people, I think.
10 units.
Okay, 10 units, 18 people. So it just depends what comes in, but that's our target.
But for the 66,000 that, or whatever the number is, 50, the remainder of the grant that we haven't spent on placemates, which is the majority of it, that amount of money would, if the mix is as we predict, but we can't be certain, that would get us the number of units and people that you're talking about. And that's the same as what we did
on that. Yeah.
All right, so 10 units. So we expect 10 units with 18 people. That's what we would get for our 92,000 or 100,000, and that's what we expected to get with a slightly different incentive structure when we approved the grant.
Yes. So we've changed the way we're giving incentives, but we haven't changed the total amount of money that we're using.
And the number of units or people that we expected to get for that money. In other words,
still
our dollars per unit is staying the same. You're just optimizing the way we spend it. So
in the way Lease to Locals do it, they count the number of units and then the number of people housed. So you get a continuous monitor of those two things. They've even got a little counter on their website.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Is there anybody from Placemate on the ground in Woodstock, or will there be?
No, Trina will be that person. They're based in Truckee, California. Is there some concern about that you think they need to be?
No, no, I was curious how they were going to do their work. And
right, no, they're running a centralized operation in all these towns. And so it's perfect that there's somebody like Trina to work with them to make everything work smoothly through the town. They often work with the housing group in a town to make that payment side work. And then Trina's also on the ground in case we need to do visits to any particular rental unit.
do they do any of the promotion that you have listed?
They do it all, yes. And when I say that, they prepare things, but obviously we're going to make the listserv posts. So it's going to be a bit of they're going to do a lot of the donkey work, and then we'll help them. So when we want to talk to Tom, it's going to be us that talks to Tom, not somebody from there. But they'll do the preparation.
Other comments or questions? Todd, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Jill. So was this, we were kind of sort of not, we weren't seeing any more results with the old structure, and that sort of is what we got maxed out. Do I recall that correctly? Like this is to like sort of kick the tires in a new way?
Our success in the last program came from units that hadn't previously been rented.
Mm.
We never really converted any short-term rentals. So we think we have to be much more targeted in marketing. We have a 5-month lease period because there are some people who come up who use their house in the winter or the summer, and maybe 5 months will bring them in. So we
Yeah.
have to be a little bit more inventive than we
Okay.
were being.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Looks good to me. Awesome.
And that's what that seasonal amount is there for 5 months.
Yeah, we're excited about it. It's been great to meet with them, and you look at their website, see the results here that they're getting in other towns. It just seems like a good fit for what we're trying to do, and especially with some of their hands-on promotion on their website and flyers that they have, postcards.
And I think we're joining at a good time because they have a lot of experience now. They've been doing this since 2019, I think. So they've learned, and obviously they learn by mistakes. And so we just get to put it all into operation straight away without any of those mistakes.
For what it's worth, actually our, I guess, kind of counterpart, or maybe Jill or Trina's counterpart in Nantucket is a good friend of mine, and came and stayed at my house a couple of weeks ago and had nothing but great things to say about their program with Lease to Locals down in Nantucket. So that was, yeah, knock on wood. But that was nice to hear, you know, from the horse's mouth. And they're in a very similar situation where they're also revising their short-term rental policies and have a lot of very similar irons in the fire as us. But it was good that at least it was good to ground truth this a little bit with them.
That's great. That's really
Yeah.
exciting. This
Thanks
is
for
a
the
test.
feedback.
Yeah, this is a test. The structure of this grant, and I may get the numbers slightly wrong, right? But about a third of it, 30,000, 33,000, is a vet. We don't pay anything more until we start creating units. And so, like childcare, we only pay for the increase in capacity. Like the ADU program, we only pay for the increase in capacity. Here, we're paying for a little bit of infrastructure, not a little bit of $30,000. That's a lot. But most of the grant, the other $60,000 or $70,000, is based on performance. And so it won't cost, if it doesn't work, we will have lost $30,000 and we'll have learned something. I think we expected, we certainly hope, and we expect it to work. Oh, it's coming. So,
Right.
All right, any other comments or questions? Sorry, I have to check. No one online? If you are online and you want to ask questions, push the button. I don't remember, where's it? It's the response button or something like that. I don't have it. I don't have any of the relevant buttons on my screen. Reactions.
Raise hand.
Yeah, okay. All right, great.
I think
Jill,
you guys have done a great job.
Yeah,
You
thank
really
you.
Yeah,
have.
great job. Thank you very much. Great job.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, second item, managing the impact of tourism. At the suggestion of a number of people on the EDC, I think it was 7, I've tried to take the issues, combine them a bit, and come up with a somewhat more manageable list of groups that can help us to analyze these concerns and that were raised, and opportunities to improve the experience of local residents and visitors. And so what I wanted to do tonight is just agree on the groups, make sure that we know about the EDC members who are interested in those groups and would help lead them, solicit interest from non-EDC members who are on the call to join up those groups. And we don't have to stop recruiting people tonight, but we can start. And to just agree on the rough end products that each group is going to focus on. Once we do that, there is a longer presentation that for each of these areas, and some of them are separate areas, like parking is separate from bathrooms and traffic is separate from safety and so forth. There are brainstorming ideas that were raised that the groups can start with. They're not limited to that, but they can start with that. So here are the 5 issues: food, crowds, and crowds includes buses and sidewalks and so forth, parking and bathrooms, sort of physical infrastructure, traffic and safety, and then information and additional services that might be provided. And I've listed the members of the EDC who have raised, I believe, have raised their hand, and several members of the community who have previously raised their hand. So I think what I'll do is come back to this slide. Oh, sorry, Greta. But what I'll do is let's talk about what these groups are doing and then come back to the slide. Given that, are people comfortable or not? So Greta, go ahead. And then Deb.
I was just gonna say that I believe I was originally on for food and maybe another category that was taken away. So I would be more than happy to be put back on food with Joe.
Okay.
Are you sure about that?
Deborah?
Yeah, some of the ideas with crowds need to work hand in hand with parking, traffic, and safety. Because ideas that we may have for the crowds depend on where they park, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there'll be moments that we're going to have to work with those groups together, or ideas that might cross-pollinate.
I think that's going to be true for almost all of these things, like information, you know, getting the information. So yes, the groups will have to all work
Certainly,
together.
but yeah.
All right, I'm going to come back to this. I'll come back to this. So just as an example of some of the ideas that were identified, just as a reminder. So food trucks, and then maybe food trucks at locations or tables at locations. Cover everyone, you know, Mechanic Street or Mechanic Square, as it's now being called by some people. East End, obviously, the covered bridge, I thought was an interesting idea. In terms of crowds, there's some physical things like buses, lots of ideas about the buses, having them pay, where they park, where they drop off, bans, limits of scheduling, but also promoting activities in other towns, which is something that I think is, you know, it's an idea. I'm not trying to evaluate these. And then behavior campaigns, and that's not the word, Deb, I think you were the first one to talk about this, but you had a much better phrase than that, but basically telling people to be
John, I
safe.
don't understand promoting activities in other towns. What is that?
What that means is that if you know, if there are places to eat or places to visit and so forth, if people come, you know, that if there's,
Yeah. Okay.
and again, these aren't the ideas that we have to do. These are just examples to remind you of what the topics are, basically. Parking and bathrooms, obviously additional capacity and locations for both. Traffic and safety, police presence was talked about a lot, road closures, signage and information. And then information and services, again, signage, digital bulletin boards, text messages, QR codes, behavior campaign. Deb is an example where they overlap, you know, clearly overlap into multiple categories. Staffing the info center during peak periods, stores open later, space for pop-ups. There were other ideas I just picked, you know.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So this, I think it's a great idea, but it's focused on the high traffic times of the year. Is that it?
I think I think the groups should consider setting the groups. One of the tasks will be for the groups to set their priorities among the ideas that are developed. If it were me, and in all of these areas, I would focus on the high traffic times.
Yeah.
But I don't want to constrain the, you know,
Yeah.
the groups.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think
You
most.
don't want to speak for anybody.
Here's what. And again, you've seen this chart before, but now we're going to need to agree on it or change it. Here's what I propose each group does. Recruit interested community members, but this is on the website. So if this document is in today's meeting on the website, so you can get to this page. Recruit interested community members. Prioritize, it says the proposed ideas, because there's a longer list of ideas under each of these categories, but you can create new ones. There's no, you know, there's no need to stick to the ones that were suggested in November. Prioritize them, and my suggestion is that all of the groups use the same criteria. Use your judgment as to how to apply those criteria, but how easy is it to execute? What's the cost? And by cost, I mean the cost to the EDC, or the amount that would have to be funded, you know, not by revenue, but the amount of municipal funds that would be needed. And then the value to residents, the value to visitors, and the value to merchants. And just low, medium, and high is fine for number 1 and number 3. Ease of execution, easy, medium, hard. Value, low, medium, high. And it might be very high to visitors and very low to residents, or vice versa, or very high to merchants, whatever. So my suggestion is that each of the groups come back with ideas and explain to the full EDC, this idea we think is easy or hard. We think it's going to cost between 5 and 20,000, and don't get hung up on the cost, right? It's, it can be plus or minus 50%. We just sort of want to know, is something going to be 3,000 or 30,000 or 300,000? Then investigate the most promising ideas in greater detail, get a little bit more accurate in terms of cost, and something about how that would be implemented. It doesn't have to be a detailed plan, but at least saying, is the EDC going to do it? I think in most of these cases, the answer is no. In some of these cases, in many of the cases, we don't have the authority to do it. We can't move the buses. We can't change the police. And I've already talked to Seton about this. Seton's on the call. So Seton, you're welcome to chime in if you'd like. But I've already spoken to Seton about this. And I think I talked to Ray about it as well. That the next step, once we have these ideas and once we agree on what we want to recommend as an EDC, we obviously need to go to the trustees and the select board and identify the portions of the ideas that they would need to consider, and so forth. And obviously any funding that we allocate to this will need to be approved by the select board. Investigate the ideas, reprioritize if necessary, and present the recommendations to the EDC. And the timetable for doing all this work is sort of the next 4 months or so. Now, we can modify this. This process is going to push us up against this year's peak period. I think it's really important, in my opinion, that we do things right. I'd like to do them fast, but we definitely need to do them right. If that means it takes us until next year to implement some or many of these ideas, so be it. But if a group in 2 weeks comes back and says, we have an idea, we think it's inexpensive, it's easy to execute, but we need to move now, then go ahead and come back and say that. So this is generally, so that's what these groups I would propose to do. So let me just open it up and ask for feedback on any of what I've just presented. And let's get agreement on what I've presented or achieved.
Well, I'm sorry.
Michael
No,
first and then
well,
Chair.
I was gonna say, the one thing on the deliverables bit or things worth considering, I would like to see there to be something along the like, we're getting close to it with the value to constituencies, but some kind of like impact or impact to problem statement. It should be expected or anticipated for each, so that way we can see something that clearly spells out what is the investment going to,
Okay,
and how
so-
is that solving a.
So in other words, just to pick an example, under the value to the 3 constituencies, the food group might say, we believe if we did this, we'd be able to feed 125 more people on weekend days during the peak.
Some kind of impact statement, yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna amend item 3, value to the 3 constituencies, identifying the impact of the idea. Okay. All right, good.
Thank you.
Joe, and then Deborah.
It just jumps out at me that some of these, it's all great. Some of these would be pretty easy to do, or probably quicker to accomplish than others. I think that's,
Some of the ideas.
yeah. I think,
And ease of execution
yeah.
that's why it's one of the criteria. It's, all other things being equal, let's do the easy stuff first.
Yeah.
Deborah?
You're on mute, Deborah.
Yep, got it. Yeah. So this is great. It's really exciting to get this going after so much discussion. Like, yay. One of the things that I want to bring up with the crowds, that's the for instance, I'm using it as a for instance, but it's a good example of something that's low cost that could make a really big difference, but that may have an upfront cost, so that it's not just us trying to figure it out on our own. Like I'd be interested specifically in the crosswalk things to look at other local towns and even bring in, you know, have a little money going to somebody who does city planning to find out impacts for an area like this. How do we organize the crosswalks at the high peak season? Because that's one of the biggest, I think that's one of the slowdowns in the town is constant people crossing the street, and the, you know, that we don't have a minute where they rest, let cars go and go. And I think that's something that we could handle. You know, we want to do it right, but we could handle that by this fall. But I think it requires some know-how that as a group, we'll have ideas, but I would really rather put a little money towards somebody who might know more. And I just want to find out what people think of that. Because that would be really the only cost beside, well, not the only cost, but one of the, you know, minimal cost.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. We don't have any funds yet allocated to this program.
Okay.
And I take, my suggestion is that
Put a proposal.
we basically let the group, my suggestion would be to first seek out local experts. So for example, just to stay with the example you talked about, the first thing I would do is talk to Joe Swanson and ask them what they think, you know. But then let's put onto the agenda, let's just agree that if any of the groups do need expert funding for experts, that you come back at the next EDC meeting. That still gives you enough time if you meet before the next EDC meeting. And if we have to, we can have a special meeting. We are pressed, we are constrained in terms of funds. So I would encourage each of the groups, and I'm on one of them, I would encourage all of us to, to be tight-fisted with the funds so that we can put the funds towards the implementation, but we need to do this right. So if any group feels that it's not, it's going to make, it needs expert advice, then come back with a proposal.
Yeah.
And by the way, I would work with respect to that proposal. I would probably loop in Eric Duffy. This is for any of the groups, just to ask his advice about how to do that. And maybe there may be municipal resources, or, he just had the summit. One of the side benefits of us funding that summit is that he's now got a network of, I think, 18 town managers.
Yeah,
So
that's an example of something that can be done, but also could go horribly wrong because it has literally a domino effect if you get it wrong, and it's going to be a live and learn thing. But I'd love to bring somebody in who knows more. Thank you,
Larry.
I just encourage everybody on the board to look through that list and contact the people that are heading up the effort if they have opinions or observations. I can look at some of those things, and I would definitely want to contact some of the people that are on committees that I'm not on, and just, I guess that's an obvious point, but anyway, I made it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would include members of I would like to publish at least the EDC members' column of this and encourage the community to do the same. And
how are you suggesting we try to get members of the community on our committees? Through this serve, or?
Well, I posted 4 posts this week. There are 16 people. Well, maybe, there are some people have shown up. I'm going to leave it to each group. It would be good if I'm not the only one posting, since my family is beginning to get a little annoyed that I am overexposed. But I would just leave it to each of the groups.
I would think by now they would be very.
Yeah. They started out being annoying before I started posting.
And now they're very annoying.
So Larry, I'm going to leave it to each group. I think we need to start recruiting. Again, I'm sorry that it's taken this long. When we come to the last topic on the agenda, which is the EDC's long-term approach and what we're going to say to the select board, we just have to remind ourselves, economic development is a long-term prospect. And by long-term, I don't mean 2 or 3 years. I mean 20 or 30 years. And so let's do it right. If we don't have enough community members, or if we feel that the group is too small, let's, you know, have a public, to Deborah's point about, you know, budget, you know, it isn't very expensive. Let's have a public meeting and serve pizza again, or whatever or those sandwiches that you guys criticize. I'm still hurting from that feedback, but so.
No one is gonna come if you serve those sandwiches.
That's exactly right.
Put those
I think
sandwiches.
a couple of them are green.
I thought that was a feature, but it turned out to be a bug. Anyway, so sorry, Larry.
Hey, when I brought the food, it was great. So you're welcome.
Oh.
You're welcome.
Oh, wait a minute, I'll give you an extra hand. You can pat yourself on the back.
I'm still looking for my reimbursement, but I'm not holding. it.
Sorry, I did call on Seton, or not call on her, but highlight that she was there. Seton, do you want to comment at all with respect to the, you know, the fact that these issues, particularly with the trustees, I mean, most often we deal with the select board, but in this particular case, since it's all happening in the central area, do you want to, you don't have to, but do you want to make any comments?
Sure. So John, thanks for talking to me earlier about this. This is all stuff that the trustees work on. And it's one of those things that each year we say, we're going to talk about it earlier, but then, you know, there's a flood or or something immediate happens. And so being able to have dedicated groups that are really focusing on this, and not just the five of us saying, oh, quick, let's call from food vendors and see if we can get people. I love that there's going to be intention and thought and you know, and a group of people from the community, not just the five of us, you know, talking in a room where maybe people show up and maybe they don't. I just love this whole concept. And certainly as you move through this process, and John and I talked about this, just even next month, we would love to get, you know, regular updates from you all about what's happening and how the trustees can be helping. Because in some cases you'll need permits, some cases you won't, but like we certainly, you know, this is a partnership. And so anything that we can do to be helpful, you know, I would say on behalf of all the trustees, we're definitely in.
Thank you. And in fact, these groups, I committed us on everyone's behalf to report back on each of these areas to the trustees at the next meeting. Now, if we haven't made progress, then we'll report that back. But the
That's
point is
fine.
that they don't, you know, since this is on their agenda as well, they're going to be hesitant and will be hesitant to jump into something thinking that the other is doing it. So each month, I think we need to at least give a 1-minute update as to where we are on each one of these five.
And I think something else just to consider for the folks who are working on these groups, it's okay to try things that don't work, right? It's okay to be like, maybe it's going to work, maybe it's not. And you just kind of do your best. You know, when we decided to, you know, spend money for porta potties 2 years ago, there were plenty of people who said, we don't need them, no one will use them. And they got used a ton. And so now I think the expectation is that we do that all the time. So not everything is going to succeed. Not, you know, and things might need to be tweaked here and there, but like, I would love to see people just come to us and just say, we're going to try this. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll try something else. So, I mean, I'm all about like, think outside the box, come up with ideas, and if they work, great. And if not, you know, we can always change things later, but just having the energy and the different ideas and the different backgrounds, I think is so valuable for us.
Fantastic. That's a great thing to remember. It's great to hear the trustees say that. Thank you. Other comments?
I mean, you're talking to the person that's about to put on a high heel race. So, you know, I'm comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Right. Other comments or questions or suggestions? Again, just to, you know, we'll come back to this list, but I think you all understand what the issue, what the, you know, the groups are. These responsibilities, are we okay with this, with the update that Michael suggested, and a recognition? I can add a point on here about coordinate with other groups as needed. I think that's just Deb to get your written down at least. Forget. Other suggestions for how we should organize this?
Looks good to me, John. It does. I would, I think I would like, a certain amount of flexibility with people who are heading up these groups to cross-pollinate with the other groups.
Yeah.
And cause I've got a couple ideas about parking and the safety thing in addition to food. And then I'm sure somebody has some ideas about food and costs and that we allow, discussion between groups, dialogue between groups to happen.
Encourage, not
Encourage, there you go. That's a good word.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, by the way, raises, oh gosh, I have a headache. I mean, I actually have a headache. That raises the question about the open meeting law. And I'm going to give, what I can tell you for certain is that if there are 5 EDC members in any of these meetings, if 5 EDC members decide to come or share their, discussions and so forth, meeting needs to be publicly warned. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
Whether or
But I'm suggesting,
No,
like,
no, you're
somebody
just-
calling
yeah,
somebody else up and
which
saying,
is
"Hey, look,
fine.
I got an idea about that."
No, what I'm saying is not really in response to you. It just reminded me.
Okay.
Larry has reminded me of this too. That's why I got the headache. Thank you. Okay.
So Chief Swanson is going to send out a memo. We're on the list. He's going to make sure we're enforcing the law here. Yeah.
No, it's a serious, we need to take it seriously, and we do. I mean, we are very transparent.
We're the most open group in the history of Vermont politics.
All right, okay, so let's just come back to this page then if there are no other suggestions. Sorry, Roger Logan has a comment before we do that. Roger?
Hi, John. This is great. I just want to suggest, and I'm sure everybody would be thrilled to have a large public meeting, but I think it might be, since there's been a lot of interest in this topic, I think it might be worthwhile to come up with kind of a reporting schedule where you say you're going to have some kind of public meeting at an opportune time where you'll offer some of the ideas that have come out of this and get some public feedback, just so people know that there's I know you publish it all the time, but somehow or other people manage not to pay attention. So that's just my suggestion, is that at some point relatively soon in the process, you say, this is what we're doing, and have a public meeting, as tiresome as that might be.
No, I think it's an excellent idea. And I think for me at least, and maybe I speak for others, having a kind of a deadline or several deadlines throughout the process where people know that they're going to have to stand up in the public and say, here's what this group has done so far, would be useful. So maybe how about, without getting into we can do some of this scheduling offline, but just a general idea of before the end of May, near the end of May, but before Memorial Day, and maybe something at the EDC meeting in July. I'm thinking of one meeting, which isn't an EDC meeting, just to kind of say, so that would give us, 5 or 6 weeks, and for each of these groups to then come back and say, we're in the middle, or maybe we have an idea that's ready, that we'd like to put forward. How does that sound?
I might not be around, but I mean, I don't.
Okay.
That's like worth.
Yeah, no, we'll do, yeah, all right, but I'll give some options.
Yeah.
Does that sound, in other words, rather than 3 months from now or 2 weeks from now, I guess is my point. I'm trying to get it in the middle there. And any objections to that, I guess? All right, so Roger, we'll start that process with the public meeting and perhaps have a second one. We'll certainly have one at an EDC meeting when we are considering the full set of recommendations.
Sounds great.
All right, thank you. Any other comments?
John, you should make sure that there's something for everybody, that these different groups have something to say. I think before you schedule a meeting, it may be premature to have a meeting if the groups haven't gotten too far in their projects.
That's a good point. All right, so fine. So then what I'll do is each of the groups keep in mind that we'd like to have something near the end of May. And in the middle of May, I will check in with you and we'll then decide what to do. Larry, that gets to your point, right? Yeah, okay, thanks. Greta?
I was just gonna say that, speaking of public meetings that we, maybe each group should start with really looking at that master list of all the ideas that were raised back in the fall when we had the last community meeting. And even if it's, I think we did go to I think we did kind of categorize them into these different, food crowds and things, but maybe just for each group to kind of just really look through that list and make sure we're not leaving anything behind, because there were a lot of good ideas raised that day.
Agree. I said that, I agree completely. And I'll make sure that that list, maybe we have like I think actually the list is here. No, it isn't here. It's online, and I'll maybe create a packet for each person, or the leader of this I'll make sure that the leaders, EDC members have that, everyone has that information, so you can share it with anyone who's
Great.
volunteering. So look at the existing list. Yeah. To start out, good. Okay, anything else? All right, so Joe, Deborah, Larry, Todd, Michael, John, Marion. And Greta, Greta, I left you off, but you said food only because of your marketing stuff. But if you'd like, would you like to, you've joined the food. So all of us have a place here.
Right.
Let me just start with the 8 of us. Are we okay with the place that we're at?
I'm okay with the place. I'm a little worried about my capacity.
You're available.
Yeah, and you're you're a 1 on that.
I mean, I have Beth.
Yeah. Beth, are you still interested in that? Okay. All right, well, so let's just, so that we've got a nice distribution, but understand that, and I know your time is, so.
I speaking for myself, I think I have a good idea who I'll have on now. So I'm all set.
All right, so Marion, let's just keep me apprised, and I'll help, and other people can help, let's try to figure out how to get some community members. I'll give some thought to that as well.
Great.
Any other, so EDC members are comfortable. Are there any folks who are in the meeting who aren't listed already? And I know Susie is not feeling well, so I hope Roger, maybe you can just check to make sure that she's okay with both of those. I can't remember. You don't have to do it right this instant, but just let me know.
Yeah, I will.
Are there any other people who are in the meeting who would like to join up now? You get reserved seating. Scott Schiller, go ahead.
Good day, everyone. Also a quick introduction. My wife and I are just starting to build a home in Woodstock, kind of just above South Woodstock. So we're hoping to be soon Woodstock residents, but we're currently based in the Bay Area of California. But if I can help out in any way, I'd love to try to learn more about the town and help. From my background and stuff, I'm probably closer to the information services, but again, I am most likely I'll be visiting at times to the area, but I will be mostly remote. If that's still, a good way to contribute, I'd be happy to do what I can.
Well, why don't you join that group, and you'll contribute to the extent that you can, and it'll, I'm sure. Wait, do you have good ideas or bad ideas?
Yeah, Scott,
it depends on the day of the week if you ask my wife. No, but
Vermont just got internet, so we can work with you remotely now. You're good.
Okay,
We have 2 as a matter of fact.
Scott, that's great. Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks, Scott.
Welcome to Woodstock, and I'm sure we will benefit from
Do we
you.
have
Welcome.
information, or how should we?
Yeah, Scott, that's a good idea.
I can private message my email address.
Yeah, would you do that? That'd be great. So Scott, Marion's gonna send you her email address. So just exchange that with her. Anyone else who would like to? Scott Smith. Wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. Scott, are you there? I can't. Scott, your hand is raised and you're muted. Oh, yes, 2 on me. Maybe he walked away. Scott?
Yeah.
All right, well, hopefully Scott will
We could just stick them in a committee. For volunteering.
Punish the reward for raising your hand. All right, Scott, if you come back in and just interrupt if you are still if you're still there. Anyone else?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, sorry about that. I couldn't get unmuted for some reason.
No problem.
Jim and I would like to be on, or maybe one or both of us. I'm not sure which group yet. So.
Sorry, you broke up there. I couldn't hear.
Yeah, so
Kim, let you know.
Kim and I would like to be involved in one or a couple. We're not sure what group yet.
Okay. Well,
Oh.
why don't you do we have the? I'm just trying to think of. Does anyone how do people feel about their email addresses on the EDC website, or would you rather that the people just send it to one person, to me, and then I'll forward it?
You can use mine. I don't have a
I mean,
problem.
well, it's okay to have privacy concerns if you do. Does anyone have them?
I have none. I'm fine.
But you're not sure.
I'm not sure.
Okay, let's just, Scott, Kim, you or Kim, just send, and anyone else. If you're interested in any of these groups, please just send me a short message and I will forward it to the relevant EDC member.
Okay, we'll do that. Thanks.
Okay, that's great. And hopefully, both of you, I know you bring a really useful perspective. So hopefully you'll decide to join the groups. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right. I realize at this stage that this is kind of a, if it feels like a kind of a new direction, not new direction, but just kind of it's not clear exactly how this process is going to work other than the guidelines that we just laid out here. That's how I feel about it too. That's not, we'll figure this out as we go along. I think we have identified the right set of issues. We have a significant amount of data that says this is what we ought to be working on. We have managed to preserve some funding for this year to support things like this. So I think we're in a good starting position, but the work is ahead of us.
I don't think a couple of months from now, I don't think what we actually wind up with is going to look anything like what we're starting out with. And I think that's good. I think it's healthy. There's going to be so much discussion and changes and, let's try this and let's try that. It's going to be a learning experience for everybody. I think it's great.
And so if you feel slightly unsettled, that seems to me to be normal, but let's push ahead. So.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Joe. Okay. Last item on the agenda is our presentation to the select board. And we have not been given a question or any guidance on what to do at this meeting, which hasn't been scheduled.
But can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Has a top? It's not clear to me that a topic has been identified for this meeting.
No. I think that
I mean, there's been a lot of scuttlebutt around town, and
I think this
blah 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 between people. But what is the purpose of this? I guess what I'm at.
I think the purpose that what I think we should take the purpose as.
Yes. Go ahead.
Is to explain to the select board what we think our priorities are and to explicitly solicit feedback from them about those priorities. Now, so that we can achieve what I think they would like to achieve, which is what? That we're in coordination. We're all rowing in the same direction.
And what direction is that?
The same.
What direction is that? The same what?
Same direction.
Yeah.
That's the only discussion that I've had. And I don't know if that, and look, we have to give the select board is doing what we're doing on this prior agenda item. They're creating a new process from nothing. I think it's terrific that they're doing it. We should be all going in the same direction. And yes, we have presented to the select board many times our different iterations of our priorities.
Yeah. And
they have given us very little feedback. And I think that we've then continued on and, and I think it's good of them. It's good that they're doing this. And it may
Well, I think that's very, that, John, I think that's great and very diplomatic of you, and that's, but my sense is, well, here we go, Joe, keep your big mouth shut. Well, it seems as though, to me, it would be very important for us to clarify and make
An argument in support.
abundantly clear. Because I think.
What abundantly clear?
I'm gonna get to that, because it seems to me that the real focus of the EDC has been lost for some people outside of the EDC. And that it would be really important, in my view, to make a presentation that clearly illustrates the value of the EDC.
I could not agree more.
I mean, where was it, where we are now, and what are we looking for in the future?
Agree completely.
I think that, to me, that is the bulk of what the presentation should be. And if it takes bullet points and other graphics and whatever, fine, so be it. But I think it's very important, because I think rightfully so, the town is in the midst of a transitional period. They're waking up to some facts that were probably not observed, or at least not discussed in the past. And now it's, oh shit, what do we do now? And okay, but the reality is, the EDC has always known what we were gonna do. We've always had, well, I maybe made mistakes along the way, but we always had to focus on the future of the town, and what was going on in the town, how we can accomplish that. And I think that's gonna be made abundantly clear at this meeting, if that's what they're asking for. That's why I asked the initial question, what is the purpose of the meeting? If that's what they're asking for, that's what we have to do, I think.
I agree that we should present what we think should be the question that we're being asked. I agree. In other words,
For the State Department,
whatever they ask for, I think we should put forward.
well, that's why that's what they're asking for.
They haven't asked for anything. They haven't scheduled the meeting, but in the discussions with them, I said, I think this is great that, the way it was explained to me was, let's make sure we're all rowing in the same direction.
Yeah.
There are known knowns.
Let me take you through this, because I think, Joe, my attempt, at least in one aspect of this, is to do exactly what you described, which is to focus on the future and to explain why the EDC is essential to do that.
Yeah.
So this is sort of an outline of the presentation. It's a draft. Most of this there's only one little framework here, which I think is important, that you haven't seen before. So just so you're aware of that. What are basically saying that we would answer 4 questions. What are our long-term objectives? What are the outcomes we're working to achieve? What programs have we put in place to achieve these outcomes? And then to your point, Joe, I think, why is this important?
Yes.
I was calling it smart growth. We might want to call it focus on the future.
So is that how you're gonna construct this? Go back a little bit, please. The last page you had. Is that what you're gonna be focusing on, each questions?
Yeah. We're gonna try. I'm gonna say to the group, to the select board, our presentations, we're gonna try to explain 4 things. We're gonna try to answer 4 questions.
Okay.
And there might be an overarching summary, which we have never discussed. I thought about smart growth, and I'll come back. You'll see why at the end, why I'm talking about smart growth.
Okay.
But we might call it focus on the future. We might call it investment in Woodstock, whatever. And we don't need to wordsmith it tonight. It's probably
Yeah. Right.
But these are the same 3 things that we've been talking about now for 5 or 6 months: develop our tourism economy, develop our resident community economy, ensure our economies are resilient. And you remember then the next level, and here are the outcomes that we're looking for. And we edited these a little bit. I haven't edited them since the last meetings. vibrant merchants, better non-peak economy, better managed peak economy, et cetera, more employees, growing resident population, a growing school population, more employee housing, more food options, a rejuvenated downtown, the ability for businesses to withstand unanticipated events. Those are the outcomes. And then we've put in place programs to achieve those outcomes, the communications program, the website, the community grants program, the major grants program. And this is where I would say, here's how those programs, it's in the programs that we spend our money. So I would say here's how we've been spending our money, and here's how that's changed. And it has changed dramatically.
I think that is so important.
Yeah, it's changed.
So important. Look at what we achieved. Here it is. And this is what we use the money for.
Yeah, and I think I think we're lucky, not lucky. We have changed how we have spent the money has changed dramatically since EDC was first created.
Yes.
So we'll show that. And so then the last question is, why is this important? And here, this is now new, and I just want to share this all with you.
Survive.
I think that Woodstock for the last 70 years, of which I've only participated in 25 of them, has tried successfully to do three things at the same time. Tried to limit growth, kind of keep things the same. And by the way, we have been monumentally successful at that. There are the same number of people living in Woodstock in 2024 as there were in 1957. Keep it affordable.
Different people
mostly.
Yeah.
Limit growth, keep it affordable, and
Keep it nice.
I'm just using really terms here.
Yeah. Well,
And I think that the realization has now hit some people, I hope most people, that we can only do two of these things. There's we can only do two of these things going forward. We can't do all three. It's not financially or economically reasonable to be able to do all three. And so we have a choice as a community. Option one, I think I'm going to start with option two. I'm going to move these around, but option two is keep taxes low. That's been our strategy for 54 of the 57 years, or whatever it is.
Yes.
Right. And if we keep taxes low, we can limit growth, and we can keep it affordable, but we can't keep it nice. The economics of it are just not possible. If we keep taxes low, the town will deteriorate. We can make taxes high, and we can then limit growth, and we can keep it nice. But it won't be affordable. And people who can't afford those significant increases in taxes, because that increase is going to be spread among a relatively small number of people, because we're still limiting growth. So we can keep it nice and limit growth with high taxes. Or we can pursue smart growth, which is we change the way we set rules and regulations and change the way we behave and stop limiting growth. Now, I don't mean by stop limiting growth, I don't mean that we're going to have a Macy's on Elm Street and that we have no constraints. Well, we have smart growth. And this, this is exactly what Stephen Bauer in the planning department is envisioning.
Yeah.
Because this is the only option where we get to keep the two things that if I had to choose, those are the two that I would pick. Keep it affordable and keep it nice. Now, if we pick option one, we don't really need
Excuse me, but limit growth, limit what growth?
Growth of the number of people, growth of the number of businesses, growth in the areas in which we are allowed to develop. Woodstock is Woodstock hasn't grown. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, you already identified that. Yes.
So, and a lot of what we do limits growth, and we've wanted to do that, and we've all benefited from that. There's nothing wrong with that, except it can't continue. I'm not saying that we made a mistake over the last 70 years. I'm talking about the next 30 years. And anyone who wants, we can have an offline discussion about whether it's possible to have all three of these things, but I think pretty demonstrably true that we can only have two of them.
Well, let me
Let
ask
me-
a question,
no,
Joe.
before you-
On that growth.
No, Joe, before you,
Right,
I
right.
want to just finish my explanation and then you'll be the first person. to ask
Okay,
a question. There's no more slides in.
All right.
If we take option 1 or option 2, we don't, to be honest, really need an EDC. Option 1, you just tax the wealthy people. And by the way, I'm a wealthy person. Just tax us and we'll pay for all the things, including the $300,000 that the EDC has. We need a new, more housing and tax the people. And it'll be nice and we can keep a limited number of people. We don't really need an EDC. We certainly don't need an EDC with option number 2. If with option number 2, you're going to take the EDC money and give it and use it to reduce taxes. That's how you would keep it affordable and still limit growth. But if we want option 3, which is the only way to have our cake and eat it too, in my view, the EDC is essential to this because what the EDC is now doing, and by the way, I don't think we were doing this when we first started, but what the EDC is now doing is investing in the growth in the future. That's why, Joe, you used the term the future, and future may be a better word than smart growth. Okay. Everything that the town does in the past has been for the present.
Right.
Taxes this year are to pay for the present. We don't invest in the future. And the EDC now, given how we've reoriented our programs or something, almost everything we're doing, almost everything, is investing for the future. That housing program we just talked about is going to take a long time, right? Childcare capacity is going to take longer. Downtown rejuvenation is going to take a long time. All of these things are not things that we need on Monday. I mean, we need them on Monday, but not things we're expecting to get on Monday. We're investing for the future. So the reason why this is important is if we are going to choose option 3, and I think that the select board and the trustees are going to make this kind of decision over the next couple of years. Then,
Couple of years?
well, or a couple of months. I mean, they're gonna, as you say, we're at an inflection point.
Yeah.
This is the inflection point.
Yeah.
It's these 3 things that we're gonna have to choose. And depending on how we choose, the EDC is either really not that necessary or essential. And I hope that we choose option 3. I think that's the only way
Well,
to
that's
keep.
just what I wanted to say earlier, John. I mean, to me, the logical conclusion with the totally illogical mind I most time have, says to me that if with option 3, if you keep it affordable and keep it nice, you eliminate that red X on growth. The town will grow. I would think. I mean, if you got a place that's really nice and you can afford to live there, I think growth is going to come. And if you get growth with population, they're going to require services and more shopping and all that stuff downtown. I think the way I see things, keeping it affordable and keeping it nice is going to stimulate growth. You're gonna get rid of that X on option 3. That's what I think.
Yeah. All right, Deborah?
Yeah, we know that putting an X through limiting growth is going to produce some anxiety. Just the wording of it, which is why you've recreated it as smart growth, which is a really smart thing to do. So I think it would be really important in this presentation that there's an additional slide that defines it so that that people understand what you mean by that, because oftentimes people aren't really understanding the EDC because there's not full explanation and they grab hold of one little piece. So I think that's a really important thing to walk people through, like, this is why it's good and this is why we call it smart, and et cetera, et cetera. So I would add that slide, and I would also think about at the beginning also potentially, we do have a mission statement and it has grown and it has changed. And I think it might be a nice thing to say, here's how it's grown, here's what it was, here's where we've gotten to, and this is the reason why.
Both good suggestions. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that. I just don't see. This is
in effect
exactly.
a mission statement now. So yeah.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that the
growth of it and in terms of it being in response to the community, you know, I just want to connect the dots between us and that it's our changes have always been in response to what we're getting from the community. And to illustrate how.
Sorry, Deborah, are you?
Go ahead.
I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, I think to Deborah's point, exactly, like laying out how is it not affordable? I know some of us know that, but like, how is it going in the wrong direction? How is it in danger of not staying nice? And then in terms of whatever we call the growth, giving some examples. This is the kind of thing that we mean. This is the kind of thing that we don't mean. I think that would be really helpful, because everybody who is inclined to be negative is going to picture McDonald's on the, you know, Main Street or whatever their biggest nightmare is when they
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Good. We also, by the way, I mean, I don't think if we stop the presentation here, no one on the select board is going to complain. So just to be clear, this is a choice that we have.
Yeah, and I mean, I was wondering about this, John, because your chart is really interesting, but it's the first time any of us have sort of seen it in that context, and it's not something that we've sort of like thought about or discussed or kind of worked through how it applies. It's an interesting idea, and it seems like it makes sense, but I don't know if that's the best thing to present of us. And another way to go about it would be
just to stop with it. Yeah.
And
I don't mean stop on this page,
but fleshing this out more and
right.
saying sort of like, because we know, like, I think the work that we've done for childcare, for example, is very impressive.
Oh.
And to spell it out, to say, this is, you know, these are the actions that we've taken. This is the amount we've increased capacity, because I think in this form, most people, it doesn't mean anything until you sort of say, like, you know.
I wouldn't agree that identifying childcare alone in itself is the right way to go. I think, yes, it's a very important fact, as is housing, but there are other things that we did that should also be illustrated.
And putting them in context, right? Childcare is economic development because our businesses don't have staff, and that's why we're, you know, like, to sort of explain this isn't this.
And even if you want to touch on, we haven't, you know, made dramatic changes in downtown renovation, but we have made some. And they've been positive, and identifying those also, and how they affect tourism. I mean, I think that's important.
Roger, and then Larry.
John, I think this is really smart. I take back everything I've ever thought about management consultants. I think this is a very good way of laying out the possibilities in front of this town, and giving the EDC credit for being, to a considerable extent, the planning arm of our government, in the sense that, or the visionary arm of our government. So I think I think this is a really good direction to go in. As usual, I would have a few nitpicks here and there, but I can share those with you. But I think this is a very good direction to go in, and I would, frankly, except where they're really exemplary, like the childcare thing, I would not defend what's happened in the past and say this was great, we did a great thing. But you're looking towards the future of this town. I might put the alternatives even more starkly, which, you know, politically, I guess you can't do, but it's not just do we want to have a nice town or do we want to have growth, but it's, do you want to have a Disneyland town, or do you want to have a town where people can live and live their lives as ordinary people, as opposed to ye old colonial Williamsburg? So I think this is a really good paradigm that you've set up between, and I think those three stark things you've come up with is like, you can do this, you can do that, and you can do this, but you cannot not grow if you're going to remain a town where actual people live. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Roger. Larry?
Yeah, John, I wrote to you about this. Maybe this is on the nitpicking side as well. Oh, there's my video. But if I understand that you might be delivering this document to the select board, the outcomes that you've listed are a variety of things. Some are very general, and some are some of the specifics, like more food options, more events. I think it would have more clout if you were to, for instance, under better managed peak economy, then you have some subsections like more food options, more parking options, more bathrooms, that sort of thing. And those would also obtain under the second, the develop our resident community economy. And then what you've got down, managing tourism initiatives, e.g. buses, food, parking, traffic safety, crowded sidewalks, that also would be under better managed peak economy. In other words, I would rethink the way you've organized this. It's great, but I think it's a little, it's mixing things up a little.
And
That's all.
and the overall purpose of that would be to shorten it, I presume, is to shorten it and simplify it without losing, is to shorten and simplify it.
Well, you could do that, or you for instance, better managed peak economy, you could have subsection
Yeah.
of more food options, more parking, more whatever. Yeah.
But that simplifies it a bit, because you
Yes.
you could stay at the higher level, make it,
Right.
yeah.
And those actually go in, a lot of that would go in both categories.
Right, exactly.
I'm just saying that
Yeah,
if you're actually going to propose this to the select board, it might be read a little better that way.
Yeah, okay, good. No, I think these are good suggestions. I don't see anyone else, so I just want to come back to Marion's point. And it touches a little bit on Roger's point about not defending things. My guess, and it's a mildly informed guess, not a complete shot in the dark, but only mildly, is that the question that, and this gets to Joe's point, the question that the select board is wrestling with is not, are the things that the EDC has done valuable to Woodstock?
Right.
That's not the question.
Right.
And so telling them, the presentation that ends here will answer that question. By the way, I greatly respect the fact that this has to be, this can't just be something that I've thought up, and also partly because that's not the right way to do it, and partly because it will get much better as we keep talking about it as a group. So I think that when I say ending the presentation here, I don't mean with this exact slide, but on this topic, basically, is where we, here's our mission, here's what we've done in the past, here's what it is now, here's a better way of explaining it, this is what the value that we add, and so forth. But the fundamental question that I think the community is going to end up wrestling with, and unfortunately, I think this will be wrestled by most people who don't understand this, let alone haven't thought about the further issue, is should we take the $300,000 and use it to pay for, and use it to reduce taxes? In other words, and to me, the simplest version of it is, should we basically take the money that we're spending for tomorrow and spend it for today? That's the question that they're going to deal with. And
That's a very helpful framing.
and maybe the thing to do is to simply have one chart that just says that, it just says a handful of words. But basically, fundamentally, the EDC is focused on tomorrow. And the town
Yeah,
has.
but I think that's correct, John, but I think it has to be clearly illustrated how important that is. I mean, just to say, well, we're focused on tomorrow because, we've done this and the foundation is great, and now we want to expand it doing this and this and this. Well, but how important has it been to the community? What were the dramatic effects that childcare have on the, what were the dramatic effects of housing and will have on the community? What dramatic effects of downtown renovation have had to the limited time amount we've done? What will that have on a long-term effect of the community? I think that's really, really important.
Right, yeah.
So I guess the question I have, I mean, and this is maybe things you can't answer, but it's knowing the select board and how they're looking at it, and having just that framing you just gave me was really helpful to understand what the essential question is, right? And so thinking about that, the select board, as you said, probably has confidence in what we've done to date, and we probably don't have to prove that. The question is how much are we also speaking to the community? And I don't know that, but like, are they going to be swayed by the fact that even though the select board knows all this, the community members that are answering don't, and they also, many of them don't
And the
appreciate or
effect it has
know
on them.
what we've done. So I'm wondering if there's value from that perspective in sort of very simply just saying like, you know, these 5 events would not be happening with us. This increase in childcare capacity that helps our local businesses to staff themselves, which is their biggest challenge. This, you know, this development in housing, just a couple of sort of high level, but very concrete accomplishments.
Yeah, no, we're clearly going to talk about, we're clearly.
But I
gonna
guess
talk about
the
what we've
question
done.
was, how much do you think we need to talk to sort of the community, and how much are we talking to the select board?
I don't know.
John, I think it's important to realize the reality of what's going on here. Now, you know, I'm a street kid, and I was raised in the streets, and my street sense tells me what I'm smelling here is a bit of panic on the select board. And they're like, what are we gonna do now? And when people get like that, they're gonna grab for everything they can to survive, or think they have to survive. And what we're doing, I think, it is so important, is that we have to protect not only what we've done, but what we can do in the future. And that has to be illustrated and in some way says to them, calm down. We're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay. But to take away from what we're doing and what we can do and accomplish is probably not the right way to go right now. And we have, as intelligent people, we should be able to figure out how to handle this without jeopardizing our future.
Well, let me ask a question about presentation, taking into account the last 4 or 5 comments.
Yeah.
The framework that there are multiple ways to go beyond this slide. The way that I've framed it is a little bit more, there's a simpler way to talk about it.
Yes.
Basically, it's just about the future as opposed to the present.
You don't want to put them to sleep.
So I think the question, so why don't I do this? Let me just, in the interest of time, because I think we can talk philosophically about what this presentation should,
Yeah.
but I think you all need to react to actual words. Let me try one additional slide after this one. And by after this one, again, I mean, after we talk about our mission and the outcomes, simpler and more hierarchical, clearer, and what we've done, which we need to talk about.
You have to.
And what our current priorities are.
Yeah.
One more page, but a different, but not this. Something that I think is simpler and opens up and makes the point. It really has to do about the future.
It really does.
Yeah, it's the future versus the present. And I know, we know you're struggling with the present.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, and so let me try out. In fact, I might even draft 2 or 3 of those one slides, and we'll only use one of them.
Yeah.
And see
How
what
are we gonna see them?
I'll send them around to all of you.
Okay.
I'll send them around to all of you, and you give me feedback and see what you think. By the way, I'm hopeful, and in fact, I could even ask that the select board presentation not be held until until after the EDC has another chance to meet. I don't know how much flexibility we have. So.
We don't know when, we don't know. I think we would definitely want to have a meeting before.
Yeah.
They would ask us to present anything, right? Because we don't even know. They could come to us with, we want to have a meeting with your opinion on these 2 options we're giving you. Right? Like, we don't even know generally what the topic.
I would not give that presentation. Someone else could give it. I'm not giving it. Okay. So we have some agency in this.
Okay,
But
good. That's good to hear.
Yeah. Well, sorry, let me put it differently. I'm going to take some agency in this. You guys can overrule me, but
No.
I think we have an obligation, and that's how I view our obligation.
Obligation to what?
is to answer the question that we think we should be answering.
That's right. That's right.
So, but in any event, this is the, let's put, I won't go, we won't go beyond this factual structure without further input and discussion from the EDC. I think that's what we're saying. And I have some ideas for how we might do that. Hopefully the meeting won't be, and I'll try to put my thumb on the scale if we can, to have the meeting after our next meeting, which is only in like 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Because we're in the middle of, well, it's 3 weeks. Yeah, so
Well, who would object to a special? I wouldn't object to a special meeting if we need it.
if we have to have one, because I believe that they're going to schedule all of the departments at the same time. So if we are forced to have a special meeting, but in any event, I will not go past this without sharing in advance and feedback and discussion on it. So then, and our fallback can always be this presentation, which will be good and clear and so forth.
Okay.
I do think, though, that we are about to enter some version of this conversation. I hope it isn't simply at this meeting. And so, I mean, I think that, I don't know what the timing, I don't know what the specific decisions are with the select board. I mean, it's probably,
You know what, John? I think if they make one decisions at this meeting soon, it's not gonna be a good one. Unless there's more discussions about it right down the line.
No, I don't think that's what I don't think they have.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone is, no, I don't think this is a decision meeting. I think they genuinely want to,
Input, yeah, ideas, whatever. Discussion, I suppose.
gonna be interesting.
It is. It
John, is
And I
my
think-
hand raised?
I
Can
think
anyone hear me?
I
or no?
think we're at
Yeah,
a
your
critical
hand's
point
raised.
in our existence, both as a town and as a committee.
Yeah. Sorry, Todd, your hand is
Sorry,
raised.
Todd.
Go ahead, Todd.
Oh, no, I've never done this phone thing before. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt like that. But I always interrupt, so maybe I did. I'm a horrible person. But I think, when I hire like a younger generation of people at my company and they don't put any money away in their 401k, and I have to explain to them compound interest, market forces, and sort of things like that, and show them how they can have X amount of dollars and how matching works and whatnot. That reminds me of sort of some of the feedback that I see in the community from some people that might not be invested or interested in understanding like the economic, output that comes from the Economic Development Commission and the people who put like us our time and brain power in. So, perhaps there's a way to sort of use your magic as a CIA agent and someone who's done lots of charts and graphs to sort of just show some of our programs and economic benefit, 10 years, 20 years down the line, even if it's something you guys might have done 10 years ago. But like for me, the childcare one's an easy one because Larry and I did a lot of work on that one, right? So, just looking at what we put into that and the economics for 5 and 10 years, they're massive. So when you go and look at a $300,000 investment in a year-over-year expenditure versus what the town would do with it, we can't say the town wouldn't put it in some AI, incubator fund and we'd all be billionaires somehow, right? We don't know what the town would do with that 300 grand, but we know what we've done with it. So maybe there's a few, projected stats you can put in there, or maybe this is a horrible idea. But again, it just reminds me of trying to explain to a 20-year-old kid why they should put 3% or 5% of their money away, even though it seems painful. So that's my thought on it.
Yeah. It's a good point, Todd. Thank you. All right, Greta.
I just wanted to say that I think, people in this group are maybe leaning a little bit in the defensive zone, just because, this is a new thing that the select board's checking in. But my understanding is that they're really going through all the committees and boards, and they just want to be as effective as we can and encourage people to be kind of working with the other community committees so that we're all doing the best we can for Woodstock. I think that, I think only good things are going to come out of this. So that's all I want to say.
Yeah. And emphasizing coordination and collaboration, I think. Yeah, it's good. All right. Roger, I think maybe this is the last comment let's see.
I just want to second what Greta just said. I may not be the best select board whisperer in the room, but I don't think there's any need for the EDC to be defensive or to feel like it has to defend what it's done. I think the idea that this is the group that creates a vision for the future and invests what small monies are available.
What?
You were saying nice
And-
things about us and you got cut off. That's,
Oh, I'm sorry. You can't hear me?
No, we can create a vision for the future and invest to achieve that. So-
And I think you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And, you know, my read of the select board as it stands today is I don't think anybody's going to have a problem with that approach. So I would do what you're doing and present it the way it's more or less in the way that John has presented it today. Thanks.
Deborah?
And I just want to add one thing. You know, we're meant to take this money and to figure out what it needs to do in the community. I don't think talking about what's happened and the accomplishments has to be defensive. I think it's a completely appropriate thing for the select board to be looking at all of these committees and saying, what's going on? And that to me doesn't feel like an attack, and explaining where it's gone and what we've created and what our accomplishments are is not defensive. It
Right, it isn't. You're right, Deb.
it's hand in hand. And
it's
I
transparency.
yeah,
explain
and I also just want to point out that 2 years ago we didn't really even have an EDC logo. We didn't have anything about what we were doing that was attached to the things that we do, which is part of, just as far as communications, is like people didn't know. And so this is an opportunity to be like, hey, did you know? Like, this is our accomplishments and this is what we've done. And to do it in a way that's not defensive, I think is a great way to step forward. And again, as Marion said, transparent. It makes it transparent.
I think
it's great. Yeah.
I think all of this is, not all of this, but a number of the comments are pushing towards the kind of, let's stop, let's not go into that second topic, if you will, the rationale. I think to some extent I have conflated two issues. This upcoming select board meeting, which I agree with Greta and with all of the comments, Marion, whoever has made these comments, this meeting is not to take on the issue that Joe is smelling. However, the issue that Joe is smelling is absolutely out there.
Yes, it is.
And I think what I'm kind of I'll still develop that extra slide, but I think it probably is. And so I'm anticipating that discussion. It's going to happen. I mean, how can it not happen? It ought to happen.
I think it's naive to assume it's not going to happen.
No, right. And it's, the question of whether or not now is the time to spend for now or for tomorrow.
Yes.
Is always a good question to ask. Unfortunately, it's the first time in 58 years we've asked it. For the last 57 years, we just assumed that we're only going to spend for today, which is why we're in the position we're in. The best business advice I ever got was when you find yourself in a hole, the first thing to do is to stop digging. And so, however, I think we're going to have an opportunity to make those 2 points in sequence and over time. And so, while I will articulate what I'm calling the second point, the power of the future and all that, I think my instinct, based on this conversation, is probably to keep it to use the word the future. We're investing for the future. Here's how we're investing for the future. Here's how we anticipate to invest in the future. We think this has been really valuable. We think it's important that the EDC that the town continues to invest for the future.
And I do just want to just clarify, when I said I just haven't had time to think, I'm not saying it's a bad.
No, I understand. No, it's
still thinking about it.
I understand. And I think that, everyone thinks about these issues differently. So getting the feedback, that's what I say. So we'll definitely have a further discussion about the presentation. And I think I've got enough feedback now to do the next draft. And it'll have some options in it that we can all, that are around the comments that have been made here. So.
Excellent.
Okay. Anyone have anything else that they
move to adjourn?
Insist on it? Oh, we have a motion to a good job. Follow Robert's rules or whatever the rules follow. There's been a motion.
They're laminated right now.
Seconded. There's a second. If there's no further discussion on a motion to adjourn. Any, all in favor?
Aye.
Wait, hold on. We have to, it has to be, Larry, are you still on?
Yeah, it was.
Are you in favor? Otherwise we have to take a vote. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. All right. 8:02, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good
Thanks for
discussion.
joining us,
It's
Scott.
gonna be a new record.
Scott, thanks for joining us.
8:02.
Thank you. Bye. all.
Bye, everybody.
8:02.